Hello everybody, this is Curtis Spivey with Team ABU Games bringing you another deck. We have got another bargain budget build for you. So this time we're playing some standard elves. Been grinding this on Moto and just love it. It's really fun for your $50 you're putting in for it. So let's go ahead and start with what we've got. First is a Llanowar Elf. It's green 1-drop classic card, Elf Druid, and it's a 1/1, and for tapping this creature, it'll give you 1 green to your mana pool. This is a ramping creature. We're running 29 creatures in this deck, and it really is made just to go ahead and fill up the board, overpower your opponent, and we'll show you how we can get them dead. Next card we got is Druid of the Cowl. 1 colorless, 1 green for a 1/3 Elf Druid again. Does the same thing as Llanowar Elf, where it can be tapped and it adds 1 green. This is made to ramp. Next card we have is Elfhame Druid. This is 1 colorless and 1 green, another Elf Druid. Kind of running a theme here. For a 1 green, you can for tapping him, you can add 1 green, or if you have a kicker spell, you can add 2 green. This is only an 0/2, so it's not as good as the Druid, but we're going to take advantage of that kicker a little bit later, and we'll talk about that. 0/2 is not the greatest body, but again, this will really be helpful in the late game. One of the main reasons to play Elves right now is Elvish Clancaller. It's already proved itself in Modern. It's a double green, it's a 1/1, and it says it's the same thing, Elf Druid. Other elves you control get +1/+1. For 4 colorless and 2 green, you can search your library for a card named Elvish Clancaller when you tap it and put it in the battlefield. So the cool thing is it kind of makes more and more and more of your elves. So when you have a lot of mana, you're able to just swarm and flood that board with as many of these as you need. From here, we've got another elf. This time it's a scout, no more druids, but District Guide. For 2 colorless and 1 green, we're running 4 of this. You get a 2/2, and when it comes into play, you can search your library for a basic land or gate card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Again, that's just to fill up your hand more, make sure you hit your mana sources. So if you can play this on turn 2, even if you only had a 2-lander with any of our lands, or the Llanowar Elf, you can really ramp out. That's what this deck's trying to do, fill this board up. Next card we're running 2 of is we've got Marwyn the Nurturer. This is a 3-drop and it is for 2 colorless and 1 green. It's a legendary creature and it's an Elf Druid, so back on that train. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwyn the Nurturer. Now here's the cool thing. You can tap it to add an amount of mana equal to its power. So she starts as a 1/1, but every elf you play she gets bigger, puts more mana in. She is legendary, so you don't want to play too many of her, but this will just give you some of those extra mana boosts you need to really go crazy with the card later on. You're going to see 1 Reclamation Sage here in the main, 2 colorless and 1 green. It's an Elf Shaman. Whenever it enters the battlefield, destroy a target artifact or enchantment. This is a catch-all in case you're playing something, especially when you start to see those History of Benalius come out that have been super popular right now, or just you need to destroy anything. Just anything your opponent has for artifacts, this will get her done. It's always good to have 1 on your main board. It's a 2/1, can definitely help you out. We have kind of got one of the big monsters of this triple green Dominaria. It's called a Steel Leaf Champion. It is 3 green, and it's an Elf Knight, and Steel Leaf can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, but then here's the thing, it's a 5/4. And that's for only 3 mana. This is going to give you such a big early game power. Now, we're not really trying to beat down too quick, but this can hold down the fort in the early game, or just put your opponent on the back foot, get 2 of these swings in, and you can just really punish your opponent and blow them out after you get that. From here, we've got a Beast Whisperer, our only 4 drops that we're running for the creature, and this is kind of one of the big reasons we play this deck. It has, for 2 colorless and 2 green, you have an Elf Druid. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. And we run 29 creatures in this deck, so you're going to be drawing a lot of them. And whenever you play a creature, you get to draw a card. It's a 2/3. It's not really super big for attacking, but it can just clog the board up, get you so many creatures. But what are you going to do with all these tiny creatures? That's going to be kind of hard to push through. So we have some spells in the deck. We have got 3 Wild Onslaught. Ba-boom! This is our kicker card. For 3 colorless and 1 green, this instant will let you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Now this has a kicker 4. If the spell was kicked, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Now the real kicker, get that, is that if you do cast it with kicker, it's 2 +1/+1 counters and it's an instant speed. If you've got your Elfhame Druid, you can ramp this out. It reduces it by 2, so it makes this thing only 6 overall to cast. So, I mean, that Elfhame Druid just gives so much work if you can do that. Just seen some blowouts where people are like, why would you play these horrible ramp creatures? It just really, that'll get you there. We were playing one more pump spell, a Strength of the Pack, to just try to go off on your turn. 8 mana is a lot of mana, but this deck can absolutely get there. So 1 Strength of the Pack's nice just to like kind of fill out your board where you put enough counters on. Say you have 6 creatures out on board, they all just got +2/+2. You're just making your board so next turn if they don't have a sweeper, doesn't matter how much damage they're probably doing to you, you can probably swing back for lethal regardless. Now we kind of have an honorary Beast Whisperer with a Vanquisher's Banner. Card's really good at pushing through that damage when they don't expect it. You can cast it so early. As Vanquisher's Banner enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control the chosen type get +1/+1. It's really crazy, but you're gonna select elves. Whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, draw a card. Now there's not 4 of it in here because I really do want to keep this creature count high. This card is really good and it can help you push through that last of the late game damage. When you're playing 1 Llanowar Elf and drawing 2 cards with Beast Whisper and this, or even 3, which I've done, you can sometimes get really close to drawing out your deck, so it really has enough draw in here. It seems insane for a green deck to have this much power, but it really does. Now we are running 5 enchantments, and such an all-star of Dominaria Limited was this Song of Freyalise. It was a first pickable card then, and in this deck it just does so much work. It's a saga, and for the first 2, so when you first play it, until end of turn, creatures you control add 1 mana of any color. For 2 mana, if you have like 3 or 4 creatures out that didn't normally produce mana, for example, District Guide and your Steel Leaf or your Beast Whisper, and you're just not pushing through damage because the board's kind of clogged up, this is going to give you that ability to just put a Wild Onslaught +2 to your team at the end of your opponent's turn, and then it can go right to this turn 3 where they get another +3. So it's kind of close to having overrun sometimes, and you can just punk out your opponent with this and really just do damage out of nowhere. The best part of this third piece of the saga when you draw that second card is put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain Vigilance, Trample, and Indestructible until end of turn. It's our only way of granting Trample, but one of the best parts of this card is you turn him sideways, let your opponent do the math. From here, we're running 1 Growing Rites of Itlimoc. This card is a legendary enchantment. We're running more both legendary. We don't want to run into it too much. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put that into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Now, half our deck's creature cards. So we're going to hit. We want these lower counts. Probably would be fine to try to get another one, but we're really trying to flood the board. Now, the backside's the insane thing. If this does transform, and at the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more creatures, transform this. When it does, because you're drawing through so many cards in your deck, for just tapping it on the backside, it's going to give you 1 green, and this is Itlimoc, Cradle of the Sun. But for the second part of this, add a green equal to the amount of mana for the amount of creatures you control. So you have 7 creatures, this could put in 7 mana. It's so insane. On its own, it could just tap for that Wild Onslaught and just really finish your opponent out of nowhere. It's an instant if they don't block. They're like, sure, I won't block, I won't take 4 damage. And then you put everything on, put on all those 2/2 counters, it just can finish the game. From there, we've got a Path of Discovery. And this Path of Discovery is really awesome. It's a 1-of. It's our last enchantment. It's 3 colorless, 1 green. And whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it explores. What Explore does is reveal the top card of your library, put that card into your hand if it's a land, otherwise put a +1/+1 counter on the creature and put that card back or into your graveyard. So you can either make your creatures a little bit bigger. The nice thing about this is we run 20 lands. If you just run too many lands, sometimes you run into that thing where even though you're drawing a bunch of cards, you can't play everything. So kind of get those lands into your hand that you can either make discard in your turn if you have too many, because it is something you're going to run into. But getting rid of those lands so you can actually get to all the business cards, especially the Song of Freyalise, is just such an awesome 1-of to have in your deck. From there, we have a really simple mana base. We've got 20 forests, real simple. From there, we've got a 15 card sideboard, and let's go ahead and go over what's happening here. We've got Sentinel Totem. It's a 1-drop artifact, and whenever Sentinel Totem enters the battlefield, scry 1. So look at the top card of your library. You may put it on the bottom. The reason we're playing it though is exile Sentinel Totem, exile all cards from all graveyards. Now this card used to be a lot better, but now there's a lot of Drake decks and sometimes they're just can't do anything with it, but it still probably comes in with the Drakes, even though you're exiling at least half if you see Enigma Drakes, you really want to shut that down. Anything with graveyard strategies too, really want to get that done. Next thing, if you know your opponent does have a lot of targeted removal, Shaper's Sanctuary is really good in any of those Golgari matchups where they're targeting you, because you get to draw a card right away, and if they really have to waste their 1-for-1 removal cards on that, you definitely are drawing a lot of cards. From here we've got Kraul Harpooner. You gotta have a way to be able to destroy Lyras, anything that's just big, those 5-buck creatures that are flying, we're not very good at killing them, so we have 4 of him. He is a 1 colorless and 1 green for a 3/2 insect warrior. He's got reach so he can block flyers, but most of the time he dies when he comes in because he's got something called Undergrowth. When this enters the battlefield, choose up to 1 target creature with flying you don't control. This gets +X, where X is equal number of creature cards in your graveyard, and then you may have it fight that creature. The reason why this is so good in those red-white angel matchups is usually someone's got a Deafening Clarion where they can clear your board, and you already have some creatures in your graveyard, and you can stabilize with this. From there we've got 3 Crushing Canopies. These are really flexible. It's 2 colorless and 1 green, more expensive than some removal, but it just says destroy target creature flying. You see we have a theme here, we can't stop flying, so gotta have a way to get rid of it. Or destroy target enchantment, so flexibility. 2 more Reclamation Sages, like the one in the main, and then really the card that I've been bringing in for the Golgari matchups, really just added this late because I just ran into a problem with them. 2 colorless and 2 green. Those decks are super slow, and they do run a lot of black creatures. They do run more green creatures, especially with their explore mechanics on it. You gotta make sure you can still punch through damage, and this is really good when you're putting a bunch of counters. It's got hexproof, it's a pony, it's an elemental horse, so it cannot be the target to spells your opponent's control, and Vine Mare can't be blocked by black creatures, so it can really finish. This is a super awesome fun deck. If you're just looking for something to bring to F&M just to blow your opponent out and have your own little custom build, been loving playing this on Moto, take it down. This has been Curtis with Team ABU Games.